Season 4 is here, and Angela is the newest released hero into Marvel Rivals. Now the question is, exactly how powerful is this character? Is she overpowered? Is she extremely weak? Does she need a buff? Does she need a nerf? And in this video, we're going to break down exactly what Angela is, how she plays, and where she fits into the meta, if at all. But if you agree, disagree, or anything in between, you can definitely continue the conversation on my Twitch stream. Link will be in the description down below, but let's get started. Now, before we even talk about Angela's power level or what she actually does, let's talk about the first problem, which is gonna be our perception of the character kind of being jaded by the fact that a lot of people are just locking this character before they know how to play it. Like, a lot of people across pretty much every rank are just locking a character they've never really played before, and they're running down games. It doesn't matter if they go 0-10, they're still playing the character over and over again. And with certain characters that have similar kits to other characters, something like Jean, I think there's a lot of overlap with other aim-centric characters, so they're not going to feed nearly as bad as a character like Angela that has special melee tech setups, and then just the way to play the character optimally is not quite known yet at the start, so there's a lot of inting going on. I guess this does bring up the relevant conversation about putting characters right into competitive right when they release. For example, some other games actually delay it by a week so that players can grind the character first and not throw games, but we also just run into the problem where people won't even play the character until they can play him in ranked anyways. I don't really know. But I want you to keep all this in mind because this will warp your perception for better or worse of Angela. So let's try to strip that away and think about what the character does objectively and her strengths and weaknesses outside of the people like inting and running it down on her. Now, the first thing is, what can Angela do and how is she being played? Now, a lot of people were kind of up in the air about what exactly her playstyle will be, but to simplify it, like really simplify it, she's basically tank Wolverine. And what I mean by that is she's primarily just trying to displace you. Now, this could be displace you out of position. This could be pulling you into her team, or it could be pulling you off the map, which is kind of the main thing that she's doing. But she's a displacement tank constantly trying to create plays by moving you where she wants to move you. And that's her like entire thing. Now, there are some other tanks that can do this. I think Thor can actually create displacement here or there, but Angela's primary thing is just bringing people a bit more out of position than that, quite a bit more out of position than that. And as we've seen with Wolverine, who became a menace in ranked after people figured him out, is that a strong enough effect in order to make her like viable, meta, busted, strong? What is it? Is Angela actually weak? And the thing that we need to really talk about here is the fact that she has a hyper linear playstyle. And what I mean is that she doesn't really do anything besides what I talked about. She displaces you, and that's really all she does. Like, yeah, she can swing her weapon, but it does very, very low damage relative to basically every other melee in the game. Super low damage. We just talked about Wolverine, for example, her direct, like, comparison, and Wolverine does a crazy amount of damage from close range. Even to squishies, he does way more damage than Angela does, and he's really good in a brawl against tanks and all kinds of characters. Angela has the displacement, but without that high amount of damage. So she doesn't really have the capability to brawl. I mean, if you compare her brawl capability directly with a character like Thor, who also has some small amounts of displacement, like he can brawl like 10 times better, like way more damage output, and it's not even remotely close. She has very little, and she also can't poke either. She really cannot do any damage from range besides her ultimate, where she throws that and then jumps into it, but she's not a poke character at all. And she can technically dive, but that's really not what she's trying to do. She's mainly just trying to move people where they don't want to be. Now, once again, this effect is extremely linear, and the fact that she can't follow up on her own kidnapping means that you can't just do this anywhere. In fact, the main places where Angela's gonna get a ton of value out of this just constant movement, constant displacement, is on places where she could take people off the map. And I think more than almost any other character we have seen, Angela is incredibly map specific. Basically, if your map has places where you could take people off, and especially around the parts of maps that there is a place for you to deposit someone straight to their death, Angela is just really, really freaking incredible because she can just fly around and then kill you, right? If you don't have a way to move, a way to fly, a way to dash away, you are going to just get kidnapped, or she's going to attempt to kidnap on you nonstop. And that's what she kind of does. She has more like opportunities to kidnap than Wolverine does, but she has no brawl potential, right? So like Wolverine could just kidnap you around the corner, to his team, to, you know, pretty much anywhere, and him alone, if he's in a 1v1 with you as a tank, he could finish you off, and he honestly has survivability very comparable to Angela, just as a DPS, but she gets more attempts overall. Like, she gets to kind of do it more, and that just makes her, once again, double down on this playstyle. Like, she's gonna do that thing. She can't play in another way. She has one thing that she does, and if that thing is good in the situations you're playing against, the comp you're playing against, then you're good. You're getting value. You could get picks. You know, you could cycle in and get picks. If that thing doesn't work, then you're doing nothing. Like, you're just flying around, doing almost no damage, and maybe taking people slightly out of position to kill them, but like I said, if they have a lot of ways to protect themselves, defend themselves, they're getting peel, or they have mobility where they can't get scooped off the map, that can all be things that shut down this one playstyle. But once again, there are things that are going to make it really, really good depending on the situation, and I just want to make it clear that Angela is not really weak, she's just hyper-linear. And this moves on to the third part of the video where we talk about, is being linear a bad thing? Like, one of the things that in Overwatch we talked about all the time is how to create map metas. Like, how do you make it so that something isn't meta across all situations? Because that was happening a lot. There was like a meta, a hero shooter meta of a certain set of characters that was so good it was played no matter what map it was. But Angela's a character that, depending on the map, her viability skyrockets or goes down to nearly zero, and that's just crazy. And it's also on parts of maps. So you could play like a Koth map, for instance, where there's 3 different maps, and on one of them you want to play Angela and the other 2 you don't. That's perfectly feasible, and that happens all the time, actually. Now, I talked about the Overwatch example and the map metas example because I think that map-based metas can feel cool, like creating diversity in a meta, or really gimmicky depending on how it's implemented. Like, having really long sightlines on certain places can allow certain characters to thrive, like long distance snipers. Having places off the map can be really cool because you can kidnap them in there, but too many of these pop up, or situations where there's really no counterplay to these things keep happening. And it feels frustrating because it's like, okay, I have to play this map meta here or else I lose. But I don't really think that Angela crosses that line. It's just something to consider, that I think map metas are something that I think are generally good, but I do imagine a world where they feel frustrating. Now, let's say hypothetically, I think we needed to buff Angela in some way. How would you buff Angela? What could you do to this character that wouldn't make her busted, but give her some more options? And I think the biggest thing that you could change is give her a little bit more damage in a brawl, perhaps with a meter. Let's just take a page directly out of Wolverine's book, and maybe not nowhere near that extreme, but you know, as she's swinging, as she's doing more damage, there's like a really small meter that just ramps up, and then she does a bit more damage at, you know, max rage. After like the 3rd or 4th hit, she's doing max damage. So that first initial engagement is not as strong, but if she stays in the fight, where she is more vulnerable, but if she stays in the fight, she could actually start doing more damage, and she actually has a way to finish off targets, like when she hits them with the ultimate, because right now alone she's never gonna finish off anything when she hits them with the crowd control at all. Like, no way is she gonna do that if there's supports in there that can heal each other, or cloak bubble. But like, compare that to Groot, where Groot ults in and he could just clean up everyone by himself. Like, he threatens damage too. She just does not, even after she's just wailed on you for like 7 seconds. She just does not represent any damage. And I think maybe being rewarded for not flying around, but like actually consistently contributing to the fight with your primary, that should give you something, right? I mean, you're not flying, you're not using your mobility, you're staying on the ground. It makes you more vulnerable being on the ground, but maybe you get like a benefit because of that, and so it doesn't force you to like double down on this flying around thing. Another thing that some people have been saying about Angela that I could partially agree with is that it feels like she is in a way missing an ability. I think a lot of people have the same complaints about a character like Ultron, where they're like, hey, the Iron Man team up should just be part of his kit. And while I don't necessarily agree with that, I could understand the sentiment that maybe Angela could use one more thing, one more piece on top of what she has to give her more options. Maybe it's a, you know, a pseudo skill shot projectile that's on like a 12-second cooldown that she could do some damage from range. Maybe it's something that can help her with brawl. I don't exactly know what that is. If you have an idea, let me know in the comments down below. But I think something that creates more diversity to the kit and incentivizes her to do different things besides just like hawking around and trying to kidnap someone, and that's her only thing that she does, I think that would be cool. Now, the last thing that I'll say is that there is a slippery slope with Angela, because I think that she could easily become overpowered if they don't buff her in the right way. Like, if you just made it so that she's a lot more survivable, she could become this character that you just can't interact with, and she never dies, and she always threatens to just push you off maps, and there's nothing you could do about it. That could be really frustrating. If you buff her damage overly much, just her base damage, then all of a sudden she could be a blitz diver that pulls you out of position, and then you get jumped on by 3 people and die instantly over and over again, and she alone could do a ton of damage to you. I don't think that's the right direction either. That's why I like a ramping bar, because it incentivizes you to brawl a bit longer rather than just like have a flat higher amount of damage. But once again, this is always about the numbers and how they're implemented. You could make them too much, you could do it a little bit, and it wouldn't really matter too much. So I do think that ultimately some changes probably need to be made with this character. But I actually do think that Angela brings a lot to Rivals in a very different way, and I'm very interested to see how she develops over time, how people play her over time, and how the character is changed over time. And the fact that they've created a flying tank that is just not inherently broken, I think is like a triumph in its own right. So yeah, I'm actually happy with Angela. I'm happy she's unique and creative, so we'll see how she moves on from here. But definitely let me know down below how you're feeling about Angela. Do you like or dislike her? What would you change about her? And what do you want Daredevil's kit to look like? Let me know in the comments down below, but definitely smash the like, subscribe, and check me out on Twitch in the links down below. Thank you so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time.